I'm going to introduce our speaker, Philip P. from Santa Ana. I understand he's real good. Thank you.
My name is Phil, and I'm an alcoholic. And if there be anyone new here, or if any of our guests had not previously been exposed to alcoholism at first hand, it would be greatly reassuring to see Roy stand up here and identify himself as an alcoholic, because he does not look the part. And Bob, of course, who read Chapter 5, and Marion, who read the traditions, don't look like alcoholics. And if you have any sense of discretion and good taste, you have already concluded that I don't look like an alcoholic. And then there's our host city chairman, Denny, here. What the hell? 4 out of 5 isn't bad. I had to laugh at Denny talking to the mayor pro tem. They're obviously old friends of long standing. And at the same time, I was talking to the Boy Scout, and I mentioned that I had been an Eagle Scout, but I was quick to reassure him that my membership in that organization was not connected in any way with my membership in this one. And I don't know about you, but I was very much impressed to find a mayor who not only welcomed me to his city, but invited me to move here and go to work. A police chief who believes that alcoholism is an illness and not a crime, and a town with the enlightened approach toward things to close its jail. Throughout my entire drinking life, I was looking for Santa Maria, California, and I didn't know it. For those of us who have not met, I would like to reassure you that if you get nothing else out of what I say here today, we will be out on time. My wife has ordered me to quit in time for her to get to Rick's Rancho to hear her favorite Al-Anon speaker. And I know where my bread is buttered, so we'll be finished here. I can sum up my drinking career very succinctly. About 2 years ago, I think it was Ancient Age Bourbon had a big campaign in Southern California with a one-sentence slogan that described me absolutely. It said, "One taste and you're ours for life." And I damn near was. And I was at a meeting several years ago, and I heard a guy refer to his career in drinking in somewhat literary terms that just about parallels mine. He said he had an uncle who wrote plays that nobody would produce, a cousin who wrote poetry that no one would print, a nephew who wrote novels that nobody would publish, and he wrote checks that nobody would cash. Now, I had every reason in the world to identify with you on the occasion of my first meeting in Alcoholics Anonymous. It was in June of 1961 in Long Beach, and I walked into a group that looked shockingly like the one here today looks. And the speaker that night had been in the same business I had been in for about 10 years, in radio and television, only he'd been in it longer. And he'd had the same problems with his checkbook that I had had, and he drank the same way that I drank. And yet at the end of the meeting, I looked around and I thought, my God, it's wonderful for them, but it won't work for me. Which I think gives you some indication as to just how deeply the insanity of alcoholism was embedded in me. And I was terribly concerned about maintaining my anonymity. If you don't think that's a little paranoid, I should point out the fact that I came to my first meeting in Southern California at a time when I had been here less than 3 days. I knew one human being in the entire Los Angeles basin. If you had printed my name in the Los Angeles Times on the following day as having attended an AA meeting, you would not have broken my anonymity. No one would have known who you meant. And yet I was petrified that one or more of you might, God forbid, on the following day come up to me and say hello, because then everybody would know. Now, I believe that my source of panic at that stage was due in large part to the fact that prior to coming to my first meeting, I expected you to look like alcoholics. And in the better than 11 years that I have been attending meetings, and better than 10 years that I have been sober, I would say that I have met fewer than 10 people who look like alcoholics, all of whom turned out to be members of Al-Anon. there's a good reason for this. You know, if the alcoholic in your family drank the way I did, he was anesthetized for a goodly part of his career. There are parts of my story to this day that I don't recall. And he probably doesn't show too much the wear for what he has done because of his lack of participation in it. On the other hand, the poor Al-Anon has had absolutely no help at all. She has had to live through every rotten minute of his whole career. And so it's not surprising that they come in here showing a little mileage. But luckily, they get youthful looking quicker than we do once they get into Al-Anon. And so I guess it evens out over the long haul. If there be anyone here who is concerned about his anonymity, I can assure you that in the years I have been attending meetings, I have never had my anonymity broken to my detriment. My opinion about my anonymity has changed substantially. I generally tell people with whom I associate on a regular basis that I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for a couple of reasons. First off, I am more comfortable if they know. Secondly, I have never been offered a drink by anybody who knew that I was a member of AA. And third, and I think perhaps most importantly, I may be the only member of Alcoholics Anonymous that this individual meets prior to his finding a problem with alcohol, if not in his own life, then perhaps in the life of a family member or a friend or a neighbor. And I've had enough contacts with people who have called me up months or years later and said, hey, a friend of mine needs help, that I think this is one of the ways that you and I can make direct contact with the public. After I'd been sober about 3 years, I picked up a part-time job in the summertime, working for the Dodgers and the Angels as one of the public address announcers. And I noticed, I told them that I was a member of AA, and it was no big thing. And I noticed one guy in the far end of the press box. Every night, he was a sports writer, and every night he would get his water glass full of bourbon when the last out was made in the ninth inning and the sports writers begin their lead stories for the following day's edition. And it was remarkable to watch this man. He would finish his story and his bourbon at exactly the same moment. And it became a thing with me to watch night after night, and he was beautiful. His timing was impeccable. About a year later, I noticed that he was no longer getting his water glass full of bourbon, and I found out that fall I ran into him at the Southern California Convention spiritual meeting. He had been sober at that time some 4 months, and he's been continuously sober since, and he's a terrific guy. And I think to illustrate the point that his anonymity and mine have taken a radical change in our own attitudes, whenever we're together in the ballpark, we invariably will start talking about the meetings we've been to and the places we've gone to and the other members of the program we know. And he is about as shy and retiring as I am. And within about 30 seconds of the time we start to talk, everybody there knows who we are and why we're alive. And I wouldn't have it any other way. When this guy and I happen to work at Dodger Stadium, it's particularly interesting to watch when we go in to have dinner in the Press Box restaurant just behind the box before the game, because we get better service than the owner of the baseball team. And I think that's for a good reason. The owner of the Dodgers is not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but the Press Box waiter is. His name is Cato, and he's been sober for 19 years, and he's a terrific human being. And when business is slow, he comes over and sits down and tells us about the meetings he's been to and the people he's met. And I wouldn't trade those two guys alone for all of those vice presidents and corporation executives that I used to drink with in those cheap beer bars before I got to you. But I think I probably would have given up that job. I really don't have the time for it, but for one fact, I'm absolutely convinced that with the exception of a drunk tank, there are more newcomers per acre in the average press box than any place else I have ever seen. We're slowly taking over in there. We've got a couple of sports writers that are absolute cinches to join us within the next year if their livers hold out. This year was a good year. We got a parking lot attendant and the scoreboard operator's brother. And in time, we are going to take over. I don't know about you, but I have never in my entire life been more comfortable than during the time I have had the privilege of being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though those early meetings were grossly uncomfortable for me. I recall on the occasion of that first meeting that despite the fact that I was unable to personally identify with that speaker, I was certainly convinced that this man had had an alcoholic problem, because he talked about things that drunks only would know about, the kind of thing that never appears in somebody's book on problem drinking, like what you do at 2 o'clock in the morning when you just close the bar and you get in your car, and instead of seeing one white line down the middle of the road, you see 3. Well, as you and I know, what you do is you roll down the window on the driver's side, and you stick your head out at about a 45-degree angle, and you close the upper eyelid. If your coordination when drinking is as good as mine, you'll have to hold the upper eyelid shut. But if you get just the right angle, the other 2 lines will disappear, and you can make it home at about 20 miles an hour. And I'd done that. And this guy talked about the longest period in your life, between 5:55 and 6 a.m. I have had years in Alcoholics Anonymous that have gone by faster than that 5-minute period did when I was out, waiting for the liquor store to open. I have a friend in Huntington Beach who was standing in front of one of those places that has sick call at 6 a.m., and I guess the clerk was sloppy on that particular day, but he was first in line at this liquor store, and the clerk didn't notice the clock, and so he didn't bother to come over and unlock the door until 5 minutes after 6. And when he opened the door, my friend hit him right in the mouth. I know exactly how he felt. But it would take a drunk to know, I think, or somebody who knows about drunks. In the same fashion, did you ever notice how many people who do not understand alcoholics will say, you drink at all the wrong times? Like hell we do. We drink at all the right ones, if you know how we think. For example, during my drinking days, if I lost my job, if my family kicked me out, if my friends were crossing the street to avoid seeing me, if I was one step in front of the sheriff and the finance company, I was a lead pipe cinch to stay sober, because adversity was comfortable to me. I'd lived with it for so damn long, it was the only comfortable circumstance I enjoyed. But if I got a better job than I'd ever had before, and the family said, isn't he wonderful, and the friends said, come over anytime, and the bills were paid, and 2 or 3 people made unsolicited complimentary remarks about me, I was a lead pipe cinch to get depressed as hell. Because there is nothing more terrifying to a drinking alcoholic than the prospect of having to be happy. We know it's only a transient state, and there's no point in being that way because sooner or later it's going to wear off, right? And at the same time, if you're like me, you play God with your own life and think deep down inside, I know what a bum I really am. I don't deserve this. And when this kind of conflict begins, you get depressed, and when I got depressed, I drank. And so it doesn't surprise me a bit to hear about an alkie who gets drunker than hell on the night before the biggest interview of his life, or who goes out and ties on his all-time greatest bender 2 days before closing the sale that would have enabled him to retire. To me, that's normal. I can understand it. But some non-alcoholics, I guess, don't. Did you ever take a non-alcoholic to an AA meeting? It's a terrific experience, like your doctor, or a minister, or an employee, or employer. They have seen what Alcoholics Anonymous has done in your life, and they're positively motivated. They like the idea. And so you ask them, would you like to go to an open meeting? And they say yes. About 2 weeks later, when the night comes for you to pick them up, you go to their house, and you get them, and you notice there has been a remarkable change of attitude, as if they have suddenly discovered that the disease is contagious. They won't back out, but they will slink into the back of the room at the meeting, desperately afraid that somebody might recognize them and think they are there for the wrong purpose. When the lights go down and the meeting starts, they begin to loosen up a little bit. About halfway through the meeting, when they're as comfortable as can be because you and I are carrying on with our usual nonsense, they start to laugh. By the end of the meeting, they are absolutely euphoric about what we are doing here. And invariably, on the way home, they will say exactly the same thing. Aren't they a happy, well-adjusted group of people? We know better. We know that it's not that we are individually all that well-adjusted, but rather that our neuroses complement each other. It is as if to say the rocks in your head fit the holes in mine. But in a very real sense, I think these people do see something that's very fundamental in AA. That you and I together are indeed capable of being happy and well-adjusted in a manner that neither you nor I would be capable of alone. In the same fashion that you and I are capable of going out there and living on the streets in a manner of existence that was totally unknown to us before we came here. Nobody has to take special care of us. Nobody has to be very tender or ginger in their feelings toward us. Because you and I have the program of Alcoholics Anonymous behind us, you can treat us like everybody else. And what a relief that is for any drunk who no longer has to have a keeper. And that's just one of the things that I'm grateful for in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have found during the years that I have been sober that if you tried to chart what little progress I have made, you would not be able to do it on a nice sales graph that went up in a steady line. I suppose if you tried to chart mine, it would be 2 steps up and 1 back, and 3 up and 2 back. I tend to make progress only as a last resort. And for a good reason. When life gets good in here, as it can only get in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have a tendency to ease back and to enjoy it. And sometimes I forget to do the things that I'm required to do in this program. And when that happens, a funny thing occurs. Some of my old character defects pop right back up again. I don't know if this happens to you, but it does to me with some regularity. I have always had a malignant ego. I mean, after hearing 20 minutes of my talk, I hardly need bring that up. But in the early days, it was quite apparent any time I got up to speak. My sponsor invited me out to Garden Grove in Orange County once to a big meeting out there on a Saturday night, and he was the principal speaker, and he said, take about 15 minutes at the start. So I did, and by the time I told those people all of the important places I had been and all of the important people I knew, it was time for me to sit down. And I went over and I sat down next to my sponsor, and while they were introducing him, I leaned over and I said, John, I didn't have a chance to tell them what I'm like now. And he smiled sweetly and said, they know. I have enjoyed that same degree of loving care ever since. One of the great joys, incidentally, if I can digress for a minute, of being a member of AA, is if, like me, you have a propensity for being self-important, Alcoholics Anonymous will not afford you that luxury. I mean, I have a great innate capacity for being a stuffed shirt. If left to my own devices, in no time at all, I could become totally insufferable. Save for the members of AA that I know who take great delight in catching me at that point in the game and telling me little things that will certainly puncture one's balloon if they do nothing else. And I'm deeply grateful for it. In any event, if you're sober a while and if you kind of ease up on the program, ego can come back. And it may not come back in the same old way. It may be a shiny new package you don't recognize. For example, you may not brag on this particular occasion, but is it any less egotistical for you and I, knowing what we know about Alcoholics Anonymous, to worry about problems the outcome of which we cannot control? Now, I'm convinced we have to do the legwork when problems arise. We can't ignore them. I'm one of those people who believes that I pray better on a dead run than I do on bended knee. I have to get out and do what I can to resolve problems. I do not have a conversational contact with a God of my understanding. I'm a typical con man. I don't believe everything I say, and I don't think God should. As a consequence, when I want to do something, I go out and I try for it, and if I'm ready for it as a member of AA, it will come, and I know who it comes from. And if I'm not ready for it, it'll start to hurt, and I'll realize I'm not ready for this yet. Now, that's as close to a direct contact with God as I have had, and it's managed to keep me sober for these 10.5 years, and I submit that if it will do that for me, you ought to be a lead pipe cinch. But in any event, I still go through periods where I choose to worry about problems that I cannot solve. And I think this is ego in one of its most insidious forms. I think that you and I must do the legwork, but having done that, we have every right in the world to sit back and to forget the damn thing. Let it go. Turn it over. It'll be okay. We know that it'll turn out in our own best interest. I don't know about you, but I've also had a problem with self-pity. I still have days where I get up in the morning and I'd rather be sick than well. Did you ever have one of those where you get up and you can hardly wait for the first insult. And if you don't get one, you make it up. Luckily, because of this program, I think you and I can recognize that kind of day when it occurs and turn it around pretty quickly. We don't have to lose the whole damn day. When I came to AA, I was so full of self-pity that I thought I was the world's best until I got into Alcoholics Anonymous and found out I was only average. I used to get up in the morning and look mournfully into that mirror. I've never had trouble doing that. And think those wonderful thoughts. There's poor Phil. Nobody loves him. Nobody understands. About 3 minutes of that, and you've blown the whole morning right there. You cannot work any part of the Alcoholics Anonymous program, even haltingly, without getting relief from that kind of problem. And the great joy of working an absolutely selfless program that can only be worked by compulsively selfish people is that it relieves you and I of the necessity of thinking about ourselves, which for an alkie is the purest form of hell. And every minute that you and I spend worrying about some other drunk or some other meeting or some other group, going out and letting somebody, if necessary, throw up over us and getting him to some meetings and doing a few things for other people around us is one more minute that we don't spend worrying about old number one. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I don't know about you, but self-pity can come back to me on occasion. If you think you're devoid of it, I suggest an experiment along these lines. Take an easy chair in a comfortable room some evening. Don't go to a meeting. Just sit there and spend the entire evening thinking about your own well-being. The doctors who are present today, I'm sure, will back me up when I tell you that virtually everybody in our society experiences literally hundreds of twinges of pain in every part of their body every single day. They are asymptomatic. They can be nerve end discharges or any one of a dozen other things. They don't mean you're sick at all. In fact, you and I are so accustomed to these that we don't even take conscious note of them if we're doing anything else. But if you happen to be lying there thinking about old number one, there is an excellent probability that in the first 30 minutes you will experience a tenth of a second twinge of pain in an area where you have never had pain before. 2 hours later, you will have come to the only possible diagnosis. You are dying of cancer. Having made that diagnosis, you spend the rest of the night in that marvelously morbid frame of mind, knowing that you're going. You wonder how you can con your insurance man into tripling your coverage. Ego comes back very readily. You begin to wonder about how many groups are going to close when you go. By the following morning, you call your doctor, and he becomes concerned, of course, because he has no medical history of any pain in that area of your body either. You've never told him about one before. And if you're like me, by now you are beginning to look the part. You haven't had any sleep. The bags under the eyes are a little more pronounced. If you're like me, you're a little grouchy. People insist upon making funny comments about the weather when you've only got 48 hours to go. The doctor will probably work you into his schedule that day. He may even hospitalize you. In any event, he will run you through a very sophisticated series of diagnostic tests and get the results back within a day or so, and he will call you in and with a look of pure pride announce that you are as sound as the day you were born. And you will come to the only possible conclusion. The man is a quack. Or at very least, he is so busy making money he didn't take enough time to read your test results properly. Now, when that happens, the best thing in the world to find is a newcomer. Any old newcomer will do. And you spend about 3 weeks getting him to some meetings where he knows some guys or where there are people who have something in common with him, getting his feet on the ground, doing those things for newcomers that have to be done. And, of course, the minute you do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous, you will get a reputation for being an activist. And somebody will say, will you speak in this prison or that jail or some other hospital, or will you be our representative to this or our group delegate to that? And all of a sudden, you've got something to do every night, and life gets good again, like it only gets in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're like me, about a year and a half later, it will suddenly occur to you that, my God, every night I'm doing something involving AA. I think I'll take a night off. And you go back and you sit in your easy chair. And within the first 30 minutes, you get a tenth of a second twinge of pain in the same place. But this time it occurs to you that that's only the second one you've had in a year and a half, and the doctor was right. I don't know whether you've had to go through that particular form of self-pity, but I did. And I finally set up a couple of rules which have helped me, and I give them to you free of charge. I go to the doctor once a year and I get a physical, and the only other time I see him is if the pain is so great that I can't stand up or if anything falls off. And he and I have never been happier with each other. I think the point to be made is that as you and I continue to stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, and as we have periods which are very good and some which are not, and as problems arise, sometimes from old defects, it's important to remember that the very same ingredients in Alcoholics Anonymous which saved our lives in the beginning will work even better on the problems we have today. And you and I need never worry about the prospect of burning out on Alcoholics Anonymous or having to look elsewhere for those answers peculiar to our problems as alcoholics, which we found here in the beginning and which will be here and will work just as well for as long as God may in his mercy allow you and I to stay. And that's reassuring to me, to know that it's going to be here and it's going to work. I'm extremely grateful that I came to Alcoholics Anonymous when I did. I think I'm the luckiest guy who ever came here, and I believe I could prove it. And I have at least 24 friends, many of whom are here in this room this morning, who also believe that they are the luckiest guys who ever came here, and they can prove it too. And it's a great joy to be around people who are that convinced that Alcoholics Anonymous has been that good to them. I have never thought of myself as being disabled or handicapped by being an alcoholic. I refuse to think about the one or two things that I may not be able to do because of alcoholism, because since I have become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, there are literally hundreds of things that I am capable of doing that I would never have been able to do, even if I had never developed a drinking problem. And I'm extremely grateful to have found this way of life. If it took the hell that I went through in my drinking in order to get here, it was worth it. If I never get another damn thing, I've already come out ahead of the game because of what you've given me so far. And I'm extremely happy with it. I'm one of those people who believes that I got conned into coming here by people who told me, erroneously, that they were going to deal with my drinking problem. We have never had a successful alcoholism program that dealt with drinking problems. And the great joy about AA is that you come in here and very quickly you discover that this is not a program designed to simply correct a drinking problem. It is designed to alter your way of life and to remove the need to drink. I'm a creature of pain and pleasure. If it were not more pleasurable for me to stay sober, I'd be back out there drinking. And I was told when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous that they would show me a way of living which was more pleasant, more vital, more interesting, and more meaningful to me than anything I had ever experienced. And I thought, boy, they are really out of it. But I was lucky enough to stay long enough to find out it was true. I was fortunate in one respect. I came into AA at a time when I was living in a recovery house for 2 months. I had no job and no prospect of becoming employed. I was incapable of holding down a job at that time. I came to AA with 4 cents and half a pack of cigarettes and a $150 car and the clothes on my back. I had no friends, I had no family, I had no social circle. So I went to 8 to 10 meetings a week simply because I had nothing better to do. I believe one of the reasons that I have been happy during the 10.5 years that I've been sober is that I have never yet found anything better to do. But in any event, I came to a lot of meetings and I listened to all these promises and I thought these people are really out of their minds. Because they were telling me things like Alcoholics Anonymous is not a diet, it's a way of life. And that if you apply these principles to your life, the same source of power which removes the obsession to drink will come into play in any area of your life where you apply it. This leads to a couple of conclusions that are quite obvious. If you and I are unhappy with any area of our lives today, then by the application of these principles to that part of our lives, we should be able to turn it into the best thing we've ever had. I'm absolutely convinced that we're required to apply these principles in all of our affairs. And if we do, We should become better neighbors, better family members, better members of the community. We should become better in every single thing we do. I do not believe that AA is a program of rehabilitation, because rehabilitation by definition is to restore you to some former level in life. I don't know how you drank, but I don't want to go back to any place I ever was before I got to you. And I have never met anybody in Alcoholics Anonymous who simply made a comeback. They have all gone further than they would ever have gone had they not had alcoholic problems in the most important areas of their lives. Everybody that I know whom I consider to be successful is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think we learn quickly that you do not evaluate success in terms of the size of your wallet or the horsepower of your car. I believe that success in the meaningful sense of the word is the ability to live comfortably with yourself. The ability to transform yourself from your own worst enemy into your own best friend. And I have seen this done in Alcoholics Anonymous by those who are practicing this program, and I guarantee it is a more intoxicating quality than anything I ever found in a bottle. There are people who are working this program so well that they can control their thinking and their attitudes regardless of what happens out there. And once we learn to do that, we will never again be hurt by anybody or anything. It's a great feeling for me to realize that I'm in a program where the only limitations are the limitations we put upon ourselves. I am absolutely convinced if you and I will do the things that are necessary to stay sober today, that there's no place we can't go. We can become any kind of people we want to become. We can do anything we want to do. People are changing in Alcoholics Anonymous permanently and radically in every area of their lives. We have the tools right here to change anything in our lives that's unsatisfactory. How many normal people would give everything they've got to know that and to be able to act on it? And it's given to you and I free. There's a certain basic excitement, I think, to living with the members of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a feeling you get when you walk into these rooms that I have never felt anywhere else and I can't really describe. But as a fellow said at a convention several years ago, it is so strong you could almost strike a match on it. It is the feeling, I think, that comes from living with people who have learned to live in the present. People who know that they need not be shackled by what they have done in the past. They need not be terrified by what may happen tomorrow. But people who are aware that God doesn't have to give you and I one single additional thing in order for us to be happy right up until bedtime tonight. Now, by gosh, that's power. I think there's an excitement to living with people who are living now. It's an excitement born of the fact that everybody learns, I think, when he comes into Alcoholics Anonymous, one basic and absolute fact, that the best day of our lives has not yet been lived. And every day we stay sober, it gets one day closer. I think the joy of being around the members of Alcoholics Anonymous lies in the fact that for those of us who are fortunate enough to be here, the good old days began this morning. I can recall when I came to you 11 years ago, I thought I had really hit society's basement. There was no further down you could go. There was nothing more that could be done for me. I thought I had really hit the bottom rung. And yet I was to learn, as everybody who comes to understand alcoholism learns, a strange and unusual fact. If the richest man in the world had a drinking problem, and he used all of the resources at his command to find the world's best, most effective, and most successful way of dealing with that problem, he too would be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we would charge him the same thing that they charged you and me. It would be given to him on condition that he give it away to the next guy in line. If we have done nothing else for the rest of the world, we have proved one basic fact, that there is a healing quality in love that we have just barely tapped, and my God, look what it has done for us. When you strip away all of the fancy language, I guess in the last analysis we find in here that all we have is each other. But the miracle of this program is the knowledge that that's all we ever needed. Thank you.